Okay, so this morning I want to talk more about Robert Hohenberger and his beginnings. As far as I can research, and as far as Cindy Cannella was able to research as well, really starts in 1966, according to documents, but I can go back a little bit further to 1965. And in 66, it's documented that I had talked about in the previous video where he is working as an auxiliary reserve officer for Riverside Sheriff's Department. And he ends up sexually assaulting a school teacher. And I talked about that. But the more I researched, I saw that the police chief at the time when he was arrested gave a statement, and I only found a little snippet of it in the newspaper, where he was saying that Robert Hohenberger had worked for the department for just over a year and a half. So there we can put that from May 8th, 1966, when he assaulted the school teacher. We can take that back and go to, let's say, January of 1965. I'm comfortable with that. Now, we don't have his work records from that time period, but it's a fair assessment to say he started his law enforcement career in 1965 at Riverside. So, what I want to ask, and what I do ask, is was the assault of the school teacher his first crime? Now, that's a good question. Obviously, I don't think it was his first crime, but was it his first sexual assault? Remember, a lot, especially back in those times, sexual assaults were not reported. And if they were, sometimes they were gaffed off as consensual. So I would put money that this probably wasn't his first time with a sexual assault. However, was it his first time in this law enforcement capacity sexually assaulting somebody? That is the question that I want to answer. And I don't know if I will ever get the answer to that, because let's say that this was his first time. So he had been hired by the Riverside's sheriff's office for at least a year and a half. So it took him a year and a half to work up the courage to do this. I don't know about that. So in this instance, what he does is, and I don't know the exact fact because I'm getting two different stories. And that's why newspapers sometimes, they're not the most reliable source for information, especially today, but even back then. However, when you don't have police reports, now I was granted some access to some police reports in the span of his crimes, meaning from Louisiana. But for this particular instance, Riverside Police Department in California is notoriously bad for releasing information. Okay, and you can take that as bad, but you can take it as a good thing as well. They just are not handing out information to people. Cindy Cannella filed 2 Freedom of Information Acts to Riverside Police Department for information on Robert Hohenberger from that time period, 1966 and 1965. And she was denied twice, 2 different requests. Am I shocked at that? A little, because Hohenberger is deceased. The cases are closed, which to me, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, and people who have watched me long enough know that. But I do know that people like to protect their own interests. Here you have a deputy reserve officer, auxiliary officer, who committed at least one horrible act while on the job. And I don't think enough was made of that. Meaning, yes, it made some headlines in the papers, not big headlines. And maybe that's because he didn't kill her. He let her go. But irregardless, when you are in a position like that, a position of authority, a police officer, you have to hold yourself to obviously a higher standard. Now, we're just talking complete criminal corruption. Bad person. Okay? I'll go as far as, I don't like police officers having beards. And I'm a beard type of person. But if I ever decided to go back to the police department, I would be clean shaven. That's just how I am with standards and integrity. Now, listen, I know that having a beard has no bearing on somebody's mind and how they solve crime, and I get that, all right? But it's just something that I believe in. Same with weight standards. Police officers, there should be a weight standard and PT test. If a guy is overweight and he can't affect a physical arrest, hey, I'm not saying fire the guy. He has a wealth of knowledge. Put him on a desk job. That's the things that I'm saying. But I digress. He was a police officer. Riverside is not giving up information on him, and that surprises me. And I want to know why. Are they hiding something? Why wouldn't they give that FOIA request to Cindy? I have had dealings with Riverside Police Department on multiple occasions regarding the Sherry Jo Bates murder, which we will get into, but just not in this episode. I had a verbal altercation 7 years ago with a retired Riverside detective and then a current Riverside detective. They did not like the way that I said a few things about not their work. I would never criticize that. Well, I would if it need be, but I didn't. I criticized them being tunnel visioned and not releasing information to experts who can help. That's what it was about. So we'll get into more about that when we talk about Sherry Jo Bates. So I don't have although me and the current detective that I had the altercation with worked things out, and I'm happy for that. Still, they are a tight group, as well they should be. And they don't return calls much. They don't look into anything in regards to the Zodiac that's sent to them. It's just how they are, But I was able to go to their police station, sit in their office, read the Sherry Jo Bates reports, look at the evidence that they had, and that alone, and then them giving us evidence of Sherry Jo Bates to test her capri pants, the Timex watch that the offender broke and left there, things of that nature. Hey, I got not only to see them, but to test them and get DNA off of that. And again, I'll go into that more when we talk about Sherry Jo Bates. But so I have to give Riverside a little bit of credit for allowing an outsider to come do that. Now, a lot of that, or not even a lot of it, 100% of that was not me. That was because of my partner, Sal Barbera. He was a ex-LAPD homicide cop. He had a connection with the police chief there, and he was the one to be able to grant that access for my lab to test her items for DNA. So I give them some credit. But that's Riverside PD. Okay, are they covering something up here? Why not release the Hohenberger information? You know, that's something that I have to follow up on in this investigation. So, was this the first time? We don't know. But I would like to look at months leading up to that, see if there was any reports. You know, hey, there could have been reports that a police deputy's car was following me, stopped me at home, made a lewd gesture, whatever it was sent in to internal affairs. They just looked at it and threw it away, whatever it was. You know, Hohenberger's personnel jacket may have that information, which is, you know, the stuff that I'm curious about. Could be other victims out there. And it helps me with his progression, where he goes from, at least in this case, sexually assaulting a female to murder. How many sexual assaults were in there? I don't think we'll ever know, but we can certainly try to figure it out. And why did he progress from a knife to, you know, strangulation and things like that? Just like victimology is so very important, learning the background of an offender is so very important. Meaning, did he start as a teen peeping into windows, spying on his sisters? And I don't even know if he has any sisters. Spying into his mom's room, you know, while they're having sex. Things like that. Joe Naso is a perfect example. Okay, how he observed his mom having sex with the neighbor through an outside window into his home. Seeing that, he ended up killing her bird because of the anger. He then started dressing up in his mom's lingerie. She caught him, humiliated him, beat him. And that developed his hatred for women and the confusion about sex. I don't know that about Hohenberger. All I know is in 1966, he is on patrol in a marked unit. One account has him pulling over the victim, saying that she has a warrant for her arrest to get in the car with him. He drives her to a remote location, taking many back dirt roads, where he handcuffs her, pulls his service revolver on her to get her to comply. Very important. Sexually assaults her, and then returns and drops her off. Now I'm going to make sure that I got these details from what I found out correct, because another newspaper account stated he told the school teacher that he found narcotics in her car. It was a narcotics thing. I don't know. Maybe it was a narcotics warrant. That could be too, but there's some confusion there about the ruse that he used to get her. And that's another thing. A ruse is very important, because once it is successful, an offender will continue to use it. Example, Ted Bundy. Okay. One of, if not his very first kill, he breaks into a home. He assaults her in her bed, in her house, where she has roommates. But then he takes her, kidnaps her. Well, the second time or third time, he's in a sling and he's having people go to his. Hold on, I got a phone call. I got to silence it because this is more important right now. He uses the ruse that his arm hurts and he's in a sling and he's able to get the victim to his car, where he hits her with a tire iron, throws her in the front seat where the front seat has been removed, and he has her. Think of the physical exertion he had to go through to break into the home, carry this victim to his car, all those things. It's very difficult. It's physically exertive. Okay, well, I'll just feign an injury, get her close to my car, hit her. There's no physical activity. And what else? There's no risk of being caught. There's a little risk, but not as much as there is breaking into someone's home, abducting them, and taking them out. So, he uses the ruse here that she has a traffic warrant or whatever. But the bigger overall ruse of that is he's in a power of authority. Okay, he has a badge. He has a car. He has a gun. He gets them. That's the bigger ruse to get them to comply. Did he give that ruse up as he went forward? I suspect he would not if he had a badge. He certainly isn't going to be driving around in a marked vehicle. But did he keep a badge? Did he buy a badge? You know what I mean? Because that ruse worked. So, May 8th, 1966, he stops the female. He leaves a note has her leave a note on the car that she would return shortly. Drove her out in the deserts, and one of the things that is very important here, and remember, it's in the details. If I just told you that he sexually assaulted her and took her home or took her back to her car, what would you think happened? You would think that he had penile penetration, but he did not. That is very important for a sexual sadist and a sexually motivated criminal to begin with. He was unable to penetrate her with his penis. Instead, he used digital penetration, which is fingers. Okay? That is very important. When you look at the broad overall scope of everything he's done that I went through in the first video, this is going to be a common theme. I want to know from his girlfriends, did he have a problem of getting an erection? Did one of the girlfriends make fun of him because of that? Was that a factor into Robert Hohenberger's mind that I hate women and I have to kill them? I don't know. But you see how we can start putting puzzle pieces together to give answers to the family of Mary Roderman, with Bertha Gold, Gordon Canella. You know what I mean? So these are very, very important facts that we have to figure out. They got back into his car. He returned her to her car. She later identified him. He was dismissed from the police force. And they did an investigation. Okay. Robert Hohenberger, says this was a consensual occurrence. Well, I mean, what else is he going to say? He's caught red-handed. Okay. during his psych eval that I was able to read, it was listed in there that the one good redeeming, I guess, quality that Hohenberger had was his above average intelligence. So because of that, he's able to put off and delay any punishment for this crime other than getting fired. It ain't like it is today. If he was alive today, you would have the union involved, you'd have lawyers involved, and it would probably take 2 years for him to get fired. And when he did get fired, he'd probably get access to his full pension. Because I've seen it. It's horrible. I've seen bad cops get full pensions when they're out on criminal charges. It blows my mind. And then you have good cops that do everything the right way and they get screwed. Anyhow, I digress. Finally, November 12th, 1968. 1968. He raped his school teacher on May 8th, 1966. 2.5 years later, he finally gets punishment for this. Which means, and this is important when we talk about the Sherry Jo Bates murder. And this was something that I had to know the answer to before I agreed to look at this case. Was he in jail for this offense when Sherry Jo Bates was murdered October 31st, 1966? He should be. So at first glance, when Cindy Cannella brought all this to me and I started researching, I said, well, he should be in jail for this, which would give him a perfect alibi to say, I did not kill Sherry Jo Bates. I was in jail. But I got this, and I was like, wait a minute. He's been out on bail. Maybe he was free when Sherry Jo Bates was murdered. Miss Cannella, you should probably reach out to Riverside's jail and find out if they have records, if he was there. And she did that. And I'll let you know what the answer to that is when we get to Sherry Jo Bates' murder. But November 12th, 1968. Headline, ex-reserve deputy gets fine and probation. That's what he got. Fine and probation. A former Eagle Mountain Reserve deputy sheriff, originally charged with kidnapping, rape, and assault with a deadly weapon against an Arizona school teacher, was placed on 3 years probation. He is Robert Hohenberger, age 25. Payment of a $400 fine was one of the conditions of his probation. Wow. Good job, justice system. The felony charges were filed against Hohenberger in May of 1966. They should have been. A trial ended in a hung jury and declaration of a mistrial on March 21st, 1966. That would have been, it says March 21st, 1960, but I know that has to be an error. After several continuances, he was scheduled for a new trial last June 10th. However, on June 7th, he pleaded guilty to a charge of assault with a deadly weapon, and the other 2 charges were dropped. The school teacher claimed Hohenberger stopped her car while she was en route to Phoenix from L.A., handcuffed her, told her she was under arrest for suspicion of possession of narcotics. She said he then drove to a side road in the desert, made her disrobe at gunpoint. You get the rest. So, May 8th, this happens, 1966. At some point in time between 66 and 68, he has a trial It ends in a mistrial. He then pleads in June, probably of 68, to the deadly weapon. It's obviously the revolver, probably holding to her head, and that should have been a felony. And if it is, he still gets a fine and he gets 3 years probation. But more importantly, he's still out to do whatever he is doing. I would be very curious to know whether he tried to get another law enforcement job. And if this was an unpaid job, this auxiliary officer, what else was he doing on the side? Well, Cindy Cannella found out that he was doing construction as one of his paid jobs. And I want to know whether there was other paid jobs and if any of them was in law enforcement. So that's how it starts. That's how his criminal record starts. Now, his next foray into crime that is documented. Remember, these are just the crimes that he was caught for. Come on. Just think of somebody who drives drunk and they get caught, once. Do you think that's the only time they drove drunk? They drove drunk hundreds of times. It was just the one time that they got caught. The same thing applies to a sexual sadist in their criminal activity. Whether the progression has started with something else as a peeping Tom, whatever it is, there is other crimes in there. He just was never caught. But a lot of those crimes have a victim, and they probably just never came forward. And that sometimes will reinforce their belief that they're smarter than everybody else, they can get away with it, and so on and so forth. That's why one of the reasons it's so important for victims to come forward. So now we're going to go forward from May 8th, 1966, and 67, which there's no indication that anything happened in 1967. What was he doing? There's a victim in there somewhere. 68, he is held accountable at the lowest scale by the justice system by getting 3 years probation and a $400 fine. We go to December 28th, 1970. Approximately 9 p.m., he kidnaps 2 girls now from Laguna Beach in California. He held a knife to one of their throats. He drove them to the desert. He raped them, returned them both to Laguna Beach. I don't have hardly any information on this. Okay? But he was convicted of it. He was arrested and he was charged with 8 felony counts. There's more details to what he did to these girls in that car that I am not going to get into. But he ended up raping them both. Okay? In this instant, he had the same problem with erection. It's so very important as we go forward. I don't know who these 2 victims are. The first one, the school teacher, I know who that was. I don't know if it's important for me to know that. But I do know that I guess I would want to know who they were because I want more information about the assault. The abduction, how exactly did it happen? What did he say during this time frame when he's holding the one at knife point and things like that? Because I want to determine whether this was his first time abducting somebody. Number one, abducting somebody, one person, okay? Because this is the first indication we have of that. With him not being in power and still getting 2 girls in his car. Now, again, it's not difficult if they comply. Meaning, I want to know what he said to get you to comply. I have written down here some notes from each victim that helps me determine how he did certain things. December 28th, 1970, Laguna Beach, where he abducted these 2 girls. He did use a gun, but he didn't kill them. He did use a knife, cut off their clothing. Something as insignificant as that has a lot of significance. Why cut off the clothing? Why not just have them remove it? You have a gun on you. You used the threat of a firearm to get them under compliance and in your vehicle. You drive them to a secluded location under some sort of duress and that you promise that you're going to kill them, let them go, whatever you said to them. You sexually assault them with a knife, meaning you use the knife to cut the clothing. Why? Is it more of an intimidation factor? I would tend to believe. But when we go forward and see that he progresses to murder, he doesn't use a knife to murder, nor does he use a gun. So in his early crimes, it's very important to know these little details. And a lot of them I don't know yet. But since the last video was released, I've had several people reach out to me saying they know Hohenberger and know some details. And that's the whole reason to do this, okay, is to get that information to come forward. This happened on December 28, 1970. I'm not sure exactly how he was caught, but I do remember that he was picked out of some sort of lineup. Now, how he got into that lineup, I'm not sure. But he's convicted. He's arrested on January 5th, 1971, so only 7 days after these rapes at Laguna Beach with the 2 girls. He's arrested and he is sentenced to San Quentin. Now, I do like this sentence, 6 months to life, if it was on the latter half of that, meaning the life part. I am all for rehabilitation and people getting second chances. I really am. But there's certain people, not that they don't deserve second chances, because we all do. But there's some that cannot, and I repeat this, they cannot be rehabilitated. Serial sexual offenders are one of those. Sexual sadists are one of those. Child predators are another. They cannot ever be let out of jail. We have gotten better with that as we've progressed through time, just like with everything. We evolve and we get better, but we are still not there. There's still too many prisons. And the justice system are letting out these sexual predators. They don't even have to be serial sexual predators, because they got therapy in prison and they've gone through all the required, well, of course they're going to go through all the required stuff that they want out. It doesn't mean they're healed. They'll never be healed. Their urge can be suppressed for periods of time, but then it's going to creep back in. It'll start with the child pornography. And then that's not going to satisfy it enough. Then it's going to be out watching on the school grounds. And then it's going to be abduction, but I'll let them go. Well, I can't let them go because last time I had a witness that testified against me in court, so I have to kill him. And then you're putting families through it again. Again, I believe in second chances, but not with people that have sexual predator instincts. That's the best way I can describe it. But I digress. He gets sent in 1971 to 6 months to life in prison. That's as far as I'm going to go today. Okay? Robert Hohenberger is where he should be. He's in prison. He has committed, that we know about, 3 rapes on 2 different occasions. And he is finally in a real prison, not a jail for a week before he gets bailed out and can do whatever he wants again. He's in San Quentin, which San Quentin, especially then, is no joke. Okay, so he is where he needs to be. One of the bad parts from society looking into a prison is that early criminals, he was 25 years old at this time, are going to get educated in the criminal mentality, how not to get caught. He has plenty of time to sit in San Quentin and say, what did I do wrong? Well, I'm going to tell you right off the bat, especially when he talks to other prisoners in there. You let him live, right? He got identified. That's what he did wrong. So is Robert Hohenberger going to correct that action if he gets out of San Quentin? And if you watch the first video, you know obviously that he does. And I'll pick up the 3rd episode with him getting out of prison. And this won't be the first time that he gets out. You see, I can never say that word right. Recidivism, and I know that ain't right, but that's close enough, is the offender that keeps coming back into the jail, right? And that's Hohenberger. How do we correct that as a society? That's a whole nother topic. But it's a topic that you better get used to when it comes to sexual predators. What can we learn from this? Well, right now we're learning that Hohenberger is a sexual predator. And he has not yet that we know, by 1971, committed murder. And as we progress, I'll let you know whether I think there's one in there or not. And if there is, Why? Why murder somebody here, but yet let somebody go here? And where does that fall in his timeline and in his pattern? Does it make sense? Okay, let's just say you have an offender who has 10 sexual assaults from 1980 to 1981. 10 of them. And he's let them all go. Every single one of them. They've all been identified. He is convicted of all 10. And he let them all go. He goes to jail. A cold case investigator starts looking at him because there's a murder that falls right in the timeline of those 10 assaults in the same area, the same MO. And let's say he's admitted to all 10. The cold case investigator says, you know what? I think he did this murder. And he's now a suspect on the murder. Because he did these sexual assaults. Now, is that right or is that wrong? Well, you have to figure out, okay, well, what was different about that murder? If you think he's good for it, what was different about it? Because he let 5 before that and 5 after that go. He let them go home. He didn't hurt them. So either A, you are looking at the wrong person. Just because he's a rapist doesn't mean he's a murderer. Or B, something happened, conflict, or something, that he killed that one. But then, after that, he had 5 more that he let go. See what I'm saying about patterns fitting into the timeline? Very important. And we're going to do that with Hohenberger going forward. Because we know, so far, he's got 3 victims and he's released them all. But he's going to progress to murder. And not just 1. Not just 2. But at least 5. And not just all women. There's going to be a male in there. An oddity. An outlier. Why? If you're into true crime, if you're into learning about the criminal mind and serial killers and how and why they progress and why they do things, why they don't do things, stay tuned, because you're like me. I'm fascinated with it. I've been my whole career. When I started as a patrol officer in 2000, it was even before that. You know, when I was watching Unsolved Mysteries with my dad as a teenager and reading Helter Skelter. And then I progressed to the district attorney's office where I'm hired as a detective where I can actually work cold cases. He said, here, I'm hiring you to work these cold cases because I've seen what you did on previous ones. I'm living out a dream. And then I go to the FBI and work there undercover and still work cold cases. And then I retire and I'm still able to do it here and help victims' family members and do it for television and help victims' family members. You know, it's my true purpose in life and I'm fascinated by the criminal mind. And I want to know more. It's why I talk to serial killers. It's why I talk to people in death row. Because you want to learn so you can pass on that knowledge to the upcoming generation. And you get answers for victims' families. You know, they want to know why too. Cindy Cannella wants to know why. Why did Robert Hohenberger do what he did to her brother? I admire that. And I want to help her. So we're going to continue to go forward. Next couple of episodes, you know, I'm going to have Cindy Cannella on here. And she's going to explain to you a lot about Hohenberger, about her brother. Once we get to the Louisiana portion of Hohenberger's life. We're not there yet. We're still in California. You know, 1966 to 1971. He's in prison. This will pick up when he's in San Quentin prison and what happens next before we get to the horrible tragedies and atrocities that he did in Louisiana. And it gets worse, folks. You think this stuff is bad? You ain't seen nothing yet. So stay tuned. If you know Robert Hohenberger and you want to give us information, good or bad, doesn't matter. It's all information. Get a hold of me, kenmains.com. Thanks for watching. Till the next episode, Mains out.